everyone, Star here with another PokeStar Weekly, Fairy Speculation, Part 1. In Part 1, I'll be talking about fairies from our point of view, rather it be literature, TV, legends, or the good old internet. So let's begin. Our first set of fairies are the element fairies. Pretty simple. Fire fairies, which are called fiery salamanders, apparently. Water fairies, or nymphs. Earth fairies, gnomes, and dwarfs. And then we have wind, or flying fairies, whatever you want to call it, sylphs. Essentially, that is that. When Flabebe was introduced, I found it a little odd that it was not a grass/fairy typing Pokemon, considering it's on a flower. Then it gets me thinking, maybe for some of our fairy Pokemon, like Flabebe, and Spritzee, Pokemon with the fairy typing may not have that secondary typing of what they look like. Of course, there's already been a water fairy Pokemon revealed, which is Marill having the new typing. So this theory could be thrown out the window with that. But it would be really interesting if Nintendo, or I should say Game Freak, does this in the Pokemon games. Of course, this can also be changed if they evolve and then they get the secondary typing that is suited for their look. Our next set of fairies, we will start off with Demoted Angel or Demons. Demoted Angels, I would say to look for a Pokédex entry that is similar to Fallen from Grace. And for Demons, people believe that fairies are actually demons. They're not good, they're evil. Another fairy we should look into is the Banshee, which is an omen of looming death, and I believe it's from Ireland. And last, Changeling, which is a fairy child that replaces a human baby. I will say that definitely Pokédex entries will be a big deal as far as figuring out what exactly these fairy Pokemon are sort of based off of. Another thing I'll quickly say is that look at Demoted Angel and Banshee real quick, because I'll be talking about that a little bit later towards the end. Next, pretty simple here, colorful fairies. They're bright and shiny. And then solitary fairies. They are the loners. Night fairies. Moon fairy. Clefairy, as we all know, is most likely getting the fairy typing. Holiday fairies. And then food fairies. That's pretty much it for that. I just thought it would be a good idea to include it in the video. So there is that. We take a side note right now to ask you this question, and feel free to reply to it in the comments below. Do you really believe this? We created fairy types to even out dragons. That is something that was said in the E3 conference. That was for exclusive people only. So it gets you thinking, is this true, or could they play a small or a large part of the story? Think about it very carefully. You never know. I'm going to talk about it once again towards the end of the video. Next, we have groups and troops. They are the chief, princess, queen fairies that are all powerful, and other fairies follow them. This could play off in a storyline or just another Pokédex entry. We don't know at this point. Not all the Pokemon have been revealed. They also fly together, work together, don't wear one color. They love to troop around during the night, and another Pokédex lookout entry, I would say, is that they swarm around oak tree, or just trees, we'll just say. And they are fairies, but they will look like bees. So swarms of fairies could be looming around trees. Once again, this is all up in the air, but I thought that this was a good thing to word out there and to look out for. I definitely will look out to see if I see these in these Pokédex entries. I am very interested at this point to see if they are in it. Now, we're pretty much done with talking about the different type of fairies, but that's not the end of the video. I'll end starting with Xerneas. Xerneas is indeed a fairy-type Pokemon at this point. It has been clarified. I wouldn't suspect anything else if it was part of the group or troop fairy typing, which for Xerneas would mean that he, or she, I should say, is the head fairy Pokemon, and that other fairy Pokemon, rather they just be normal fairy type Pokemon, or they could be pseudo-legendaries or legendaries that follow Xerneas, and Xerneas being ahead of all fairies. That's just something I was thinking. It would be interesting to see. After all, it is a legendary mascot. It is the mascot for X. So, you never know at this point. Another mascot, Yveltal. Yveltal, we know, is also a dark and flying type Pokemon. It's not a fairy typing. So, why exactly did I include this in this video? Well, one thing, he's a mascot of Y. But, as I mentioned before, he could follow along the lines of the Moated Angel or the Banshee. They are very death-related, and he happens to have a move called Oblivion Ring, or Death Wing in Japan. It could go either way at this point. I'm more or so guessing on the Banshee, because it is the sign of death. And it gets me wondering also if these two Pokemon are how they're going to exactly set off a storyline between the two. And I was also thinking maybe perhaps in X and Y will do a little bit like they did in Ruby and Sapphire, and that the two of them will sort of have different storylines. That maybe Xerneas will be a big heavy flow in X and have a storyline of its own, as to if Yveltal had its own storyline that barely mentions Xerneas or has a different flow to it. I am very looking forward to this because we always play Pokemon games and they're pretty much similar, except different legendaries are swapped out for the other ones and in different locations and such. But I would really like to see if Pokemon X and Y had some various storyline changes that would benefit each version, if that makes any sense. And that is the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. Tune in hopefully next week where part 2 of this video will be released, and hopefully I won't be flubbing on my lines as much. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.